Good evening, everybody. Thanks for showing up tonight on a special edition of True Crime with the Sarge. I'm your host, Joseph Jackalone. And today was a tough day in many aspects. And I'm going to go through with you all on what transpired today at the sentencing and the impact statements in the Rachel Morin case. I'm glad I went. I got invited by Matt McMahon to come. And I'm glad I went because it gave me a reality check. Let's put it that way. And what do I mean by that? Spent so many years as being a cop in New York City, you kind of get this jaded view on life, and you kind of look at different aspects of things. And then every now and then you get jolted back into reality. And today, for me, that was a bit of a gut punch when you listen to the impact statements of Rachel's children's. I mean, she had five children, and varying in age from 20 all the way down to 7. And to hear these statements, unfortunately, none of the children were present, but they recorded interviews. And Faye, the oldest daughter, that's Matt's daughter, she wrote out a statement and had the attorney general, the state's general, state's attorney, I'm sorry, read it out for her. So it was very impactful, and I'm sure that the Allison Healy, who is the attorney, she was really good. I'm going to talk about a lot. I have some big praises for her and her deputy, and there was some things that happened. There was a little bit of fireworks towards the end, and that's with the defense attorneys. So let me just lay out the entire morning for you. The I got there, of course, I get early wherever I go. So I got there about 8:30. About 9 o'clock, people started mulling in. And it was like a quiet whisper. The room is absurdly small, the courtroom. It's maybe about 40 by 40. It's built in the 1800s. The benches are the original benches in there, which I think were torture devices because between my bad back and everything else, that's about the biggest joke I'll make here tonight. It was very, colonial looking. It was an interesting courtroom. It didn't have any odors or nothing like that. It was recently redone. I wish they would have redone the seating. Anyway, I digress. About 9:15, the police show up. All the investigators, the forensics teams were there. The case detective Golden, the chief, the Harford County sheriff showed up. His colonel showed up. The FBI was there. I think Homeland Security was there too. All of the law enforcement partners that were involved in this manhunt and case were there to show support for the Morin family, which I thought was phenomenal. I mean, I don't think anybody was left out in regards from law enforcement, and it was nice to see. At about 9:35, the perp was escorted in via the sheriff's. He was shackled in the front. He had cuffs in the front. He was shackled on his ankles. He was wearing a white and gray striped prison attire, and that was with the gray thick stripes. And he didn't look at anybody in the audience or the crowd. He looked down when he walked in. He walked right to his seat and he sat down. The judge then came in a few minutes early. Everybody rose. She asked us all to sit, and then she asked the defendant to rise. And she read his name out and said, this is basically what's going to happen today. Do you have anything to say? And he said, no, I don't have anything to say. He did speak a couple of times, but nothing of any great substance. The attorney for the family, excuse me, for the state, Allison Healy, started off and talking about the case that happened last year, the trial. Now, what was interesting is that she actually didn't introduce, but mentioned things that really weren't talked about in the media, kind of things. And I have to be careful with words I use because we know how the channel gets with certain words. So I'm just going to use SA and SO because you can have to figure out what those mean because they're used so often during this trial that it was actually, it was unreal. but what they also found on the perp's cell phone was uh, material related to children, let's put it that way, and other forms of pornography. And the defense took offense at that. The defense started off, I think, on the wrong foot right away. They asked for a sidebar as soon as this thing started. Before we even get one word out there, they asked for a sidebar. Everybody goes up and you put the white noise on. And the I thought you could see that the judge was a little ticked off at this. I watched everybody's expression. I took almost a half a notebook worth of observations and taking a look at what people were thinking, I think. But the judge entertained him for a few minutes and then sent everybody down. The impact statement started off with Faye. She's 20 years old. That's Matt's daughter. And she wrote a very moving piece. And I'm going to paraphrase few things because I am not capable of writing word for word what everybody says. So anything I say about the impact statements going forward, this is all paraphrasing, folks. But she talked about her mom and how she was going to miss out on just about everything. She just recently became a mother herself. Her daughter was born last year, and Rachel never got a chance to meet her granddaughter. And she talked about that. She talked about her trips that they would go to Wawa to get coffee and the trips to Target and all the other different things that young ladies do with their mother. She was set to go with her to go tanning for the first time because at the time she had just turned 18 and you weren't allowed to go, so her mother was going to take her tanning. And she laid out all the different things about what made Rachel so special: her smile, her laughter, her ability to care about people. And that was the big theme going forward through just about everybody's impact statement, was how Rachel really cared about people. And she wanted to actually go back to college and take courses on this. She had some dreams of being working in the fitness field. You know, she was an avid runner. She would run just about every day. And she also wanted to take classes in order to try to help people to get through certain things. They didn't really expand upon exactly what she wanted to do, but they said it. A couple of different people said that she was there, always trying to help people. And we're not just talking about helping her own kids. She was talking about reaching out and helping other people. And I thought that was really, really nice how they were able to do this. I mean, when we're expecting a 20-year-old to do what she had to do and be able to talk about her mom and be able to do this, and I couldn't imagine if, I had to do such a thing in such a horrific event. So I give her a tremendous amount of credit. The the youngest kids they had, Declan, I think was 12. I have here Lila is 9, and her sister, and Violet who's 7. And these children are going through probably the most worst things imaginable. Right? They have no idea. They can't imagine what happened, why this happened, and why it happened to them. These kids are going to suffer for the rest of their life about this incident. And they're struggling to get through, or probably just to get by through life, and try to deal it now without their mother and basically their main support system. Other family members have been pitching in, of course, to try to help out, but nobody can replace your mom, especially when you're that young. And to hear a 7-year-old talk about his mom, it was a recorded impact statement. I mean, I don't think it was a dry eye in the room. A couple people did leave to compose themselves out in the hallway, and it was really moving. It was a short statement from the 7-year-old, but it was moving nonetheless. And the statements, both brothers gave statements. The one brother, I think it was Michael, actually turned to him and said he forgave him for doing what he did. But he also told him to repent and be able to, face God and everything else that goes along with it. And Rachel's youngest brother had a very difficult time getting through his statement. And he was, LFT from Decipher is here. I met her today. She was in the courtroom. Very nice lady. You should go check out her podcast as well, Decipher. I haven't got a chance to listen yet, but She seems to be a really nice lady, and Matt really had some nice words for her. So I give my full endorsement to go over and check out Decipher. The the thing that really got me going, right? So the defense, I'll tell you, they were. I think they ticked off the. Not only did they tick off the state's attorney, but I think they ticked off the judge too, too many times. And what do I mean by that? Well, they had an opportunity, of course, to discuss the charges. Now, the charges were murder, the SA, the SO, and the kidnapping. So you had the assault and the offense. And the defense wanted those crimes merged together. They said the SO and the SA should be one charge. The kidnapping should be added into the SA because they listed an entire group of court cases which says that basically you just can't do add-on charges. It's double jeopardy and all the other things that go along with it, which would have meant a significant amount of less time because I'm going to say this probably a couple of times, but he got for the first count, murder, he got life without the possibility of parole. For the SA, he got life without parole, consecutive, which means after. So he dies, you get him for another life, right? So just in case there's life after death, they get him one more time. For the SO, he got 10 years consecutive, and the kidnapping, he got 30. So that would be two life sentences plus 40. So that would actually knock off the extra life sentence and the extra 40 years. So he would get life without the possibility of parole, and that would be it. We also know too how things can change with the laws down the road, and things can happen. Anyway, uh, Attorney Healy then said she went right after her. She listed all the different things that said wrong, and she then said why. She explained the difference between an SA and an SO in the Maryland State Penal Law, which is basically the same in every penal law. And I'm not going to get into the penal law codes for these crimes, but you know just because of the um, specific nature of them. But there's a difference between the SA and the SO. Think of the SA as the actual act, and the SO was the forcible touching outside the body. And that was her rebuttal to this. And the judge has to then decide on all that stuff later on down the road. And I thought I thought Attorney Healy really handled that well. But she went after each one of her. It was the female attorney on the defense side, and she went after in each one of her problems with the sentencing and said wrong, wrong, and wrong, and she just went right at her. And I like that. That was pretty fiery, and I think the audience or the members of the family and people who were watching liked it also. The the judge was like she no nonsense. She was pretty much straight to the point. But I was watching, observing the judge just about the entire day too. I was trying to focus in on the perp, focus in on the families, focus in on the judge. I wanted to see their observation. Every time the impact statement was being read or we were listening to it, the judge was looking right at the person. When Rachel's mom stood up and gave her impact statement, it was very good. And of course, it was extremely emotional for her and for many people in the audience that once again people had to leave. And she talked about it, Rachel as a little girl, and she talked about all the different aspects of what had transpired and how this has affected their family and what it means going forward and how the common themes that I've heard from her brothers and her mother is about the stress, the paranoia, the anxiety, the lack of sleeping. This one incident has destroyed an entire family's peace, and it has affected the lives of so many other people outside of that. It just wasn't one person. This was dozens of people that will never be the same. And Attorney Healy discussed that in her closing argument, I think you'd call it. And she discussed how this has been a horror for so many people and not just for Rachel. When Attorney Healy got a chance to discuss the case, she had warned the family that there were going to be crime scene photos in her presentation. She did a PowerPoint presentation. And the one thing I really liked about her presentation, every time I hear a PowerPoint presentation, I sit back in the chair and go, oh boy, here we go. But it was actually very good. She started off with several photos, uh, slides of photos of just Rachel as a young girl, as a teenager, as an adult growing up, and it was really moving. And she even said that the perp should be looking at these photos because he didn't look at really anybody or anything. I mean, every now and then he'd glance at the television, but he was kind of like doll's eyes. He would look straight ahead. He had these big black pupils. He made no emotions. He didn't make any facial expressions. I was sitting probably about, I guess, 15, 20 feet from him. I was sitting to his right angle. I can get a good shot from basically three-quarters of his face. So I could get a pretty good shot of what he was doing. He wouldn't look at the judge. Even when the judge addressed him, he looked down. There was a court interpreter, of course, that was interpreting everything everybody was saying to him, which got a little bit distracting at certain points because everybody was so quiet that you can actually hear the translation going through, and everything was seemed to be like on delay. And yes, Kay, coward would be a good word to describe him because from what I understand from people who were sat, because I actually sat next to the victim's advocate and I spoke to her at length during a couple of the breaks, and he had a much different demeanor today than he had during the trial. And a couple people had said it looked like as if a little bit of a chip was knocked off his shoulder when he was doing that. He actually had a look of concern towards the end about how this was all going. This was how this was all going for him, and he seems as if he still won't take responsibility for it. Now, there's a Dr. Witzak who was instrument in the trial, and she is the prison psychologist. I think she is. Her statements, because what happens is at the sentencing, they have to go through certain things. Is this person amenable to being uh, rehabilitated? Is it about general deterrence? Is it about specific deterrence? Or is it about punishment? And we all know if you've been on this channel any length of time, you know that I've asked you a bunch of questions on general deterrence and specific deterrence because they're huge criminal justice issues that you deal with. And Attorney Healy laid out an unbelievable argument about how he was not amenable. And most of it came from Dr. Witzik, who basically said he scored high on these charts to reoffend, but she still didn't trust the data because she said he's a lot worse than that. Meaning that if you let him out again, the likelihood of him offending again is very high. Remember, folks, he was allegedly responsible for a death in El Salvador. He was allegedly responsible for an attack in Los Angeles, and now he's been convicted of this case in Maryland. The, so the defense started getting into the weeds with their story about how he's growing up and he's delivering bread and he's doing all these things in El Salvador, and he was worried about the the gangs and all the different things that go along with it. The story absolutely had no point to why he did what he did. None. None. And uh, Flores, thank you for gifting those 5 memberships. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I think that the defense was trying to like pull some strings about, like he had a tough life growing up and He was trying to make money, so he came to the United States because he had a child with this woman and he was trying to send money at home. They used every excuse in the book except for the responsibility of what happened on August 5th in 2023 or the attack in Los Angeles. Nothing about any of those things. The When it came to the general and the specific deterrence, we know general deterrence is you punish somebody and somebody else sees it and says, I'm not doing it. Specific means I get punished and I'm not going to do it again. And she talked about incapacitation, and this is the attorney general, the state's attorney Healy said, this is about incapacitation to keep him away from everybody else. And that was the deal. The judge takes all this into consideration, and now she puts us on recess. And she said 15 minutes. Well, it went on for almost an hour. I think it was close to it was close to an hour. And we were just waiting for the judge to come in with her sentencing decision. And we were all just mulling around talking. And I was actually watching just the dynamics. The family members would go, the defense attorneys would go into another corner. The prosecutors stayed in the courtroom, sat and talked with the families and mulled around with everybody inside the courtrooms. But it was interesting. I was watching the cops. The forensics would stay with the forensics. The uniformed cops would stay with the uniformed cops. The investigators would stay with the investigators. The command staff would stay with all the other groups, right? All the cops, even though they're one department or two different departments, they all just separate themselves into groups. It was kind of interesting to watch that dynamic. The When the judge comes back in, the judge had a lot of different things to mull over when she had to do this, and I think that's what took her a real long time because the defendant, I'm not even going to use his name anymore. The defendant, or in this case, convict, had said that this is what his excuse was, how his DNA got at the crime scene. You ready for this one? His DNA got at the crime scene because somebody planted it there. That was his answer to how his DNA got on and in Rachel Morin, that it was planted. And that his DNA was also planted in the Los Angeles case. And he used he said Fatima did it. And I haven't got a chance to research who Fatima is, but I'm assuming it's a gang in El Salvador. I don't know. Maybe somebody who is on here had time because after I left, I drove to Delaware to visit my folks quickly. So I've been in the car for 2 days. I've been living out of a car. So I didn't get a chance to research that. The photos of the crime scene, I have seen a lot of bad photos. And these are shocking. I mean, the injuries that Rachel sustained were so violent and brutal that she had, from the strangulation, she had bruises 3 muscle layers down. She had a 6 by 6 laceration through blunt force trauma in the back of her head. Matt believed that that shovel that was found was used to hit her in the back of the head to incapacitate her. And that's where he believes that 6 by 6 laceration comes from. When she was dragged through that to the where the gully was, where I showed you in the video, if you got a chance, if you haven't seen it, there's a crime scene walkthrough that was posted yesterday. And she was assaulted again. He crushed her cell phone, broken in pieces. They showed us all the pictures of this. They showed then her nude body up against the wall of that culvert, and the attorney had warned the family to basically turn away at this point before she showed the pictures. And then she showed an up close picture of her face, and the only word I can use was unrecognizable. That's how much trauma she suffered in this attack. And if anybody who was sitting there who was maybe on the fence about, what was going on, I mean, these pictures alone were absolutely horrific. And I'm glad that the kids weren't there to see these things, because there's no reason that you'd have to uh, look at that kind of stuff. If if you didn't have to do this for a living, let's put it that way. The judge came back. She sat down and she addressed the defense attorney, because what happened is there was a little back and forth with the defense attorney. When I said that the defense, I think, pissed off the judge and the prosecutor, it was interesting. I'm I'm looking here. Just give me one second. There was an actual quote. The defense attorney, the female defense attorney, had said, "Well, Judge, it's really about this case, whatever." And she just went, "Yeah, all right, that's it." And then she basically got up from her bench and left. She was pissed, and you could tell it. I had said to Matt, I said, I had because Matt was sitting right next to me. I looked over at him and go, "That is not going to be good for him," meaning the perpetrator. When he left, and he said, "Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's going to be good." So she came back in. She sat down, and she looked directly at the state attorney, and said, "I want you to copy this message down for Rachel's children who are not here." And she gave one of the most sincerest apologies I think a stranger could give to a family. She, yes, Tom, very passionate. I tell you, I really like her name. Her name is Judge Yolanda Curtin, Curtin, and she was phenomenal. She was well spoken. She was no nonsense, and she gave a message to the family that was really heart wrenching. And she apologized for the state. She apologized that this happened. She spoke about how the Mom Pa Trail is one of the jewels of Harford County, and how that has been taken away from the public, and how Rachel has been taken away from her kids, and the horror that they're going to have to go through, and all the trauma and all the different things that this one individual has caused. And she used the word, I believe it was callous, cold, calculated. She used the words premeditated. And as I'm listening to this, I, of course, remember, I'm looking at this from a total different view than the family is. But when I'm hearing words like the judge saying this was premeditated, this was callous and cold, I'm going, this guy's going away for the rest of his life and then some. And she was extremely focused. She looked right at the attorney. It was that sometimes she just barely blinked, and she was just going straight at her. She then gives the allocution after this. He says, "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" And he makes the fatal mistake, meaning the perpetrator makes the fatal mistake, and he says, I get it right here. "No, I don't have any questions, but I want to appeal." That was his statement. That was basically the only thing he says. Anyway, she sentenced him to life without parole for the murder, the possibility of parole, life without parole for the SA, SO. He gets 10 years and 30 years for the kidnapping. And then and I wrote the word schooled, schooled the defense attorney. I mean, as here it is, right there, schooled. Because she talked to the defense attorney about the little, I guess, antics that she thought maybe she was pulling. Because I wrote here, this was my exact quote. Now remember, this is all paraphrasing. Judge shoots back immediately that it because what happens is defense had said our position was that contact does not equal the act, and the judge shot back immediately that it doesn't address that there isn't a difference. There is a difference, and that if you remove one, you don't have the other. The the assault and the offense, two different crimes, and that's it. And she basically, like I said, schooled her. And I couldn't see the defense attorney's face, but I could only imagine that it turned three different colors of pink. The defense, the female, then says something in response to that, and that's when she said, "All right," and she just gets up and says, "We're taking a break, 15 minutes." Hang on a second. We got some other notes over here. Oh, defense had said, "Well, we didn't know anything about the images of children on the phone, and we should have been known about that through discovery." And the attorney, Keeley, said, "Yes, you were. It's in the discovery." She even had the date. If you ever saw or you ever heard that term, someone's playing checkers and someone's playing chess, this was it. Because Attorney Healy played chess while the defense was playing checkers. And what do I mean by this? She knew, Healy knew exactly where the arguments were going to come for sentencing today. She knew they were going to try to merge the cases. She knew they were going to attack the images found on the cell phone. She knew all of this ahead of time. And she was ready. It was almost as if she set an ambush for her. It was like that's basically I guess that would be about the best way I could describe it. It was an ambush. She fell right into it and she got destroyed. It wasn't even they didn't even have a glimpse of hope of getting anywhere with the attorney or the judge because it was just one misstep as far as I was concerned over the other. And from what I heard, it was like during the trial there was some tete-a-tete between the defense and the judge too, how constantly calling for sidebars and starting immediately with these things. That's what I said. I was extremely impressed with Judge Curtin. Um, and after they read the sentencing, I also wrote that as my final part in that when they wrote that. If you don't know what AMS stands for, go to your Urban Dictionary and you can look it up because if I say it now, they'll ding me. The the evidence against this guy as I was listening to this thing was overwhelming. I know people were talking about in the YouTube world, the evidence was absolutely overwhelming against this guy. They had his DNA on different parts of Rachel's body, not just from inside, but on the outside also. They had cell phone records. They had everything that you could imagine. He even had his own friends turn against him because he had basically lied to them too. So I mean, there's no now listen, he going to appeal? Of course he's going to appeal. But the only two words I got for him with that is good luck. Because unless he's going to talk about ineffectual counsel and everything else that goes along with it, that's usually the last grasp, I think, for any defendant who's been convicted of something, and they go and they do this. The If you've never been to court for an impact statement and you have an opportunity to do so, I think you should go and listen because what I heard today is, it's unforgettable in so many aspects, in so many words, because not only the children but the adults, th- the problems that people have after a loved one has been taken from them so violently is that they will never be the same, never. And all the advocates in the world and all the psychologists all in the world is not going to help. It's not about closure, which people tend to throw that word around a lot. I don't think you can ever get closure from something like this. It's just that I think the only thing that helps some people get through is time itself, because nobody is going to ever turn around and say, "I'm good now. I'm in a better place." Uh, Bayou Babe, yes, denied. Exactly. It was about the actual word. It was more like a bitch slap. I guess I can use that word. But it was an interesting day. It was an experience. And I am grateful that Matt had actually invited me to come and sit with the family. And I was just texting him before we got onto the show, see how he was doing today. Because this was the final moment for a lot of people, right? This is what they've been waiting for now for over 2 years. They were waiting for the sentencing, and now it's over. And it's almost as if, like, what's next? And the only thing I can think of is what's next is that people need to figure out how they're going to pick up their lives and how they're going to move on without their mother, without their sister, without their daughter. And that, folks, is not an easy task. That is something that I don't think anybody would be able to explain to anyone. And I've been through with family members in certain aspects and doing some of these things. And, from our perspective, we kind of have to put up a cold shoulder, so to speak, so you don't get that kind of attachment. But this was a little different for me. And, it was definitely an experience that I will remember. And we also need to remember that when we talk about these cases or we do these things, there are real life people behind the computer screens and families, and I've seen some stuff, on the internet, and so have you, that has just been, man, what would the families think about that or say about this, right? Some of these conspiracy theories and crazy stories and stuff like that. So it's just, the mother's, Janet said here, I reviewed the mother's impact statement. Yeah, Rachel's mom had a very emotional day doing this. I mean, she was able to barely get through it. Her youngest brother had the most difficulty getting through it. You had to really feel for the guy. He was really trying. He came in. I think they said he lives in New Zealand. If I remember, I was listening to it, and he flew in just for this moment. And that was. If you guys have any questions for me, I'm just going to take a quick couple of look through the notes here, see if I forgot anything. I have. Yeah, no, I mean, that's about all I have for you. If you guys don't have any questions, I'm going to be signing off in a few minutes. And thanks for hanging out on such short notice. And I hope that this was a little bit helpful. It's very difficult. I have to ask Lauren Conlon. If you don't know who Lauren is, from Pop Crime TV, she's a reporter. She does all the TV shows on the Diddy trials and stuff like that. And she gets all these notes, and I'm trying to catch up to her speed on how to do this. But it was an interesting thing. I just want to thank you guys for hanging out and for listening. And thank you, Forrest, again for donating those memberships tonight. I want everybody to have a good night. Hug your loved ones. If you haven't spoken to your mom or your dad or your brother or your sister in a long time, give them a call tonight or tomorrow. Just say hi. That's what I did on the way home. I spoke to everybody. So, question from Kelly. Hang on a second. How did Hernandez get to Arkansas, where he was apprehended? I believe it was Oklahoma where he got. Here's the thing with that. He was actually, after the homicide, he was living in Bel Air area up until December. So the attack happened in August, and he was still in the neighborhood. He was still there up until December when he made his way across the country. And someone double check on where he was. Kelly said Arkansas, but I thought it was Oklahoma. I don't remember. I had a lot of things going through my head. She could be right. And so he was within grasp within that thing. But how the whole investigation worked is they got through forensic genetic genealogy. They identified that he was from El Salvadorian descent. They had the hit on the DNA from Los Angeles, which we really don't know much about that case. But they led him to the family in El Salvador, and they basically gave him up. They said, this is my brother, and this is whoever it was." And to- there's there's Matt. Tulsa, Oklahoma by bus. Thank you, Matt. That is Matt McMahon, folks. And so it was the police did a great job putting this together. I mean, international manhunt. He had a red notice from El Salvador for the murder, which I which we were also told that they tried him in absentia and they found him not guilty of that murder in El Salvador. So that was an interesting little tidbit that that they uh, they also let us know in there. But folks, you guys all have a great night. Thanks for hanging out. And Matt, if you're still in the room, hang in there, buddy. And we hope things get better if that's possible. All right, folks. Remember, tomorrow night, Tuesday night, we have our regular show. I have Kathy Kleiner Rubin on, who survived Ted Bundy. So that's going to be tomorrow night's show. Much different show than what I've done here the last 2 nights. But everybody, you have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.